What's up, guys? We are back with a Mythic Legions review, and I don't remember the last time we did one of these. It has been too long. So Legions are finally coming back out, and the first thing that I have gotten my hands on is this big monster. So in the so-called ogre scale, we are finally getting our horse dude. So the first one up is Shadow Equaddron here. And this guy comes in a snazzy new box. So it's of course a larger format box. You've got the figure in the window, and then it's just done up in sort of like a siege motif where some sort of castles are kind of under attack. You've got one here on the spine that's being blown apart. It very much looks very Arethyr-esque because of all the fire. And then the back of the box has got a write-up and then some smoky effects and some demons back here as well. So, you know, pretty typical Legion style packaging, but of course very new for this particular guy. So let's do it. Let's pull him out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our Shadow Equaddron figure. Now this is, of course, I guess this is technically the variant to the regular Equaddron. So the 20th anniversary 4 Horsemen figure that incorporates their logo into the figure design. So of course this is very much a heavy parts reuse figure when it comes to the ogres. So there's a lot of stuff we've seen here before, but of course there's a little bit that we've never seen here before, and there are 2 versions of this figure. So there's the regular one, and then this is the Shadow version. Just happen to be doing this one first because I got him first. Feels kind of weird to do the variant before the regular one, but here we are. This guy is, for all intents and purposes, very, very familiar territory though. So if you've got an ogre scale figure, one of these, you know, larger figures, you kind of know what to expect. He does have hooves, does have a brand new crazy head sculpt, but for the most part, it's that same kind of figure. So let's see what it can do, see how he moves around. Of course, we'll start at the head because, well, it's different. So it sits over top of a sleeve. So there is a big neck piece that sits over top of the neck itself, similar to figures like Kauros or Purplore, for example. So they've got that sort of neck piece that sits over top, or the Minotaurs, stuff like that, where it will sort of accentuate the shoulder region and cover the ball peg a little bit. So it does hinder movement a little bit, so he can look basically just sort of like neutral like this, and then he can tilt down. But the head is actually 2 parts, so you can move the face up and down a little bit. There is room to sort of wiggle it side to side. There is not much in terms of what I would call rotation though, so you can swivel it at the ball peg, of course, and then you've got a little bit of tilt here and there. I do feel like the head's pretty much wanting to come off at any given time, because it doesn't really clamp down on that ball peg too much, at least not for me, so just kind of watch out for it. Arms go out at the shoulders, about that far. Rotate all the way around, of course. No bicep swivel. You've got your single jointed elbow with rotation, normal stuff there. We've got our hinges and rotation at the wrist, so you can hinge them about that far. Pretty good movement all around. Single torso piece, so you can tilt side to side, backwards, forward, and then rotation. It's a big old massive ball peg that sticks up from the crotch into the chest. And then we get to the legs. This is actually a point of contention with this particular figure and this type of figure. I do not recall having the quote-unquote known issue with these figures before. I don't remember if I ran into problems with them. It doesn't sound familiar to me, but I know a lot of folks have had issues with this style of figure in the past. So if you caught my recent NECA Defenders of the Earth figure review, you'll know that I had just a hell of a time trying to get those figures to move their right leg because of the design. This figure utilizes the same crotch system. So the left leg, your right, pegs into a sleeve basically that comes from the right leg. So there's the crotch, the right leg pegs into a hole in the crotch, the left leg pegs into a smaller hole that's in the right leg. And it's all held together by friction, of course, with little bumpers and ratchets to keep things in place. It was so tight on this figure that, just like with the NECA figures for the Defenders of the Earth, I had to take this guy apart, and I had to shave down some of those quote-unquote ratchet pieces on the sleeve coming from the right side and the peg coming from the left to allow the right leg to move. And the issue here is that when you want to move the right leg, it's so tight that it starts to shear at the actual sleeve. So it's hard to get him to go forward. This is where the issue will come from. This right leg is not going to want to go forward if you have the problem. You probably won't, or you might not rather. Some folks will. And then you get the left leg to go forward. So my problem was that the left leg would go forward just fine, but the right leg just was not moving. Or if it was, it started to bring the left with it, but more often than not, it just didn't do anything. Now that I did that, it works fine, but of course I had to do that. Legs go out that far. They can't really go backwards. You do have a thigh swivel at the top. You've got single jointed rotating knees, and then you've got rotation at the ankles. There is a rocker down there, and then you've got a little bit of hinge. It's not tons, but it's enough, especially for a figure with hooves. There is no tail articulation on this guy, which is also different for figures with tails. Technically it does, I guess, because the way it works is that the tail is part of a disc that sits between the torso and the waist, so it doesn't actually peg into anything like some of the other figures that have tails do with ball pegs. So it's just sort of a swiveling disc that can move, but it's not really articulated like all the other joints are. So he moves, I mean, just as well as any of the other ogre figures do, except for, at least in my opinion, the head, just because it's a weird, I mean, it's obviously a weird head design. It's different. This is not exactly maybe what it was intended to be for, so it sort of sits higher up, not as tightly on that ball, and it doesn't have as much room to sort of wiggle and rock around. I do think that the hips are still definitely a point of concern, at least for me. Again, I don't remember having this problem on my other figures. I'm going to have to go back and check them now just to see what they can and can't do. But this guy was really bad. Out of the box, no heat was going to fix it. It's not that kind of a problem. It was just way, way, way too tight. So when you try to move those two joints, the plastic just doesn't want to go. If you do it too hard, it's going to tear or it's going to break. So I had to err on the side of caution, pop him apart, and do a little very, very minor sanding. And now, I mean, now he moves just fine. Like, it works exactly like it should. He can move all over the place. No issues there, but at the same time, I'd rather not have to do that. This is a Legions figure, though, so of course, my main interest here is just the looks and what this guy brings to the table that is similar, but also, in many ways, different from all the other figures that we've already gotten. So there are, what, 4 other ogres at this point? So there's 2 orcs, the Cyclops, and Bolthor the Tower. So this is our 5th, well, 6th if you have the regular one already. And he is, I mean, he's overwhelmingly a figure that we've already gotten before. So the chest piece armor, I believe, is the same. The gauntlets are the same. The belt is the same. It's the one that comes on Kurzog, I believe. The calves are the same. The shin guards. But, of course, the paint is different. He's got little different accents. He's got this new collar piece, which makes him look... It makes him look beefier than he actually is. I mean, this is still the same kind of figure, but you've got... I mean, let's just pop it off right here. So you've got the extra piece, and it's this piece right here. So you can slide it off if you wanted to. You've got your regular sort of ogre scale torso right there. But then you can pop it on, and it sort of sits underneath his chest armor. It adds the sort of thicker throat to make it look more beast-like. It's got fur and hair on it. And then it's got more of that sort of spiked armor, especially on the back, which I really do like. So, I mean, if you're one of those many enterprising Mythic Legions customizers, this is a piece you can take off of this guy and throw it on somebody else and just paint it up to match. And then you can give somebody else a different style of look, you know, turn Bolthor the Tower into some sort of beast man or something like that. Get crazy with it. But I really do like the small changes that are here compared to the other figures. His color scheme in particular looks really good. So he's got all this, you know, sort of spotted and mottled color. So very much looks like something that you might see on a horse. So dark browns, light browns, and then he's got a lot of that black. The soft goods on this figure are incredibly well done. This is the kind of fur that I really like to see. So it's really thick and robust, and it covers the tail really well, so you don't have to see that kind of disc thing. But the tail also looks really good too. It's just, you know, a piece of plastic that doesn't exactly do much. It does add a little bit of stability to this guy though, which I do really like. Shouldn't really need it, but I do like it. And then the colors on the armor just work. That sort of coppery orange color with the dark silver and grays, the sort of bone spikes that he's got all over him. And then you've got those big hooves down there, which, I mean, this of course gets me excited for horses in the line, but these are monster hooves. They're humongous feet. Sculpt is really well done, and they are incredibly stable. So not only do they look cool, but they have a, no pun intended, large footprint for this guy to just sort of, you know, stomp down on whatever you're putting him on. And then of course we get this head sculpt that's, well, I mean, just look at it. It's crazy looking. This again is the Horsemen incorporating their logo into a figure design. So of course the big sort of armor piece, the plate that runs down this horse skull head thing, whatever he's supposed to be, it just looks fantastic. This version, the Shadow Equaddron in particular, has the gold stamp on it when it comes to the plate. When it comes to that armor, it's really mottled and pitted and very much battle worn. But the bone aspect of the face, I mean, I wish, if there's one thing I wish, is that he could move his mouth. I wish it was articulated, but it doesn't move. But overall, the sculpt is fantastic. The paintwork is tremendous. I love these like rivets on the side of the head, so it looks like the bone is somehow like stamped across his face, because he does still have flesh, but he's also got bone. So it's really weird. Whatever kind of creature this thing is, I'm really curious to see more of a backstory when it comes to this guy, and of course the regular one. But I think the Horsemen absolutely knocked it out of the park when it comes to this particular sculpt. Just when it comes to that small thing. Well, it's not small, it's a massive head sculpt, but I think you know what I mean. It transforms a figure that is a lot of reuse. I mean, what, like 75% reuse here? It transforms it into something entirely different, because there is nothing like this on your shelf by any means. You do not have some sort of spectral, half flesh, half bone, half armor-plated head sculpt when it comes to whatever kind of horse figures you have, and I think they absolutely killed it. Of course, we have to do size comparisons for those of you that may not know just how big of a figure this is. So we've got our Shadow Equaddron in the middle there with the good Baron here. So of course a standard 1.0 style Mythic Legion, so 7-ish inches figure. Granted, he does have the little doodad on the top, so a little bit higher. And then we've got a more standard 6-inch figure with the classified Zartan. And then we can maybe try something a little bit smaller. So there is the Figuarts Goku for an import style figure alongside Equaddron. And how about something else that's 7-inch scale, but is not Mythic Legion. So here is the Super 7 Thulsa Doom for a human character that fits in with the same kind of mold almost. And then, because these guys often get paired up just because, here is something even smaller. A Plunderling, because, you know, I can't get enough of these little guys still. So you can see, I mean, Equaddron is a humongous figure. The ogre scale bodies are, you know, 9-ish inches tall. They are incredibly large, and of course very bulky as well. So this guy's going to scale really well alongside other Mythic Legions, but he's going to be just a huge, bulking bruiser kind of a figure among pretty much anything you throw him at. And then as far as accessories goes, this guy is still pretty par for the course when it comes to the ogre scale figures. So they really don't ever come with a lot of stuff, mostly I'm assuming because of the fact that they are so big. But this guy comes with 2 of these, and you can see he's holding one, we've got another one. So it's a super, super black 4-bladed club, and we've seen this before. I mean, what, every ogre comes with this except for one of them? Right? Maybe? I can't remember at this point. But this is not a new weapon by any means. It just happens to be jet freaking black. And it looks really good like this. I mean, the finish on it is really well done. I mean, you can see it's super shiny, which is honestly kind of a weird thing. But at the same time, I really like it in comparison to the gunmetal-y gray silver color of his armor. I will say that this is another instance of these figures having some super tight hands. You're definitely, well, I will say you are most likely going to have to heat his hands up to get these in there. Mine took more work than I wanted. And this is another instance of me finally coming around and wishing that Mythic Legions came with other hands, because as much as I like having 2 of these, I would love for this guy to just have some fists. just to bash the hell out of some other figures. But still, I mean, you do get these two amazing weapons. And of course, you can swap them in and out between other figures. So this might be my favorite instance of this particular kind of weapon so far. The color scheme alone really does it for me. But the finish also was really nice with that super high gloss. So he doesn't come with a lot of stuff, but these are some really solid looking weapons. So overall, this guy is, I mean, he's essentially what I expected he was going to be. He's built upon a base that we're pretty familiar with at this point, but he does have some new stuff. So he's got that collar that sits around his throat, which makes him look a little bit beefier, more imposing. He's got the hooves, which I think look fantastic on him. And then, of course, this head sculpt, which is probably the biggest selling factor for a lot of folks when it comes to this figure, because of course it is so different. And I mean, it's as every bit of a good head sculpt as you expect it's going to be. They absolutely nailed it from sculpt to paint, all the little details. The one real hang up for this figure is one that hopefully you don't experience to the level that I did, and it comes to those hips, that crotch area. It's just not ideal. The way that peg system works, the tolerance is so tight that if it's as bad as mine was, you're going to have issues when it comes to moving that around. It's going to feel like that joint is just going to want to shear itself in two, and you might have to crack him open like I did. It's not the hardest fix, but of course it's not what I want to spend my time on either. So that's going to do it for this look at the Mythic Legion's Shadow Equaddron. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.